Right, my panel tonight, good-looking panel of men, let me tell you. Jonathan Davis is from Hertfordshire. Jonathan is the man behind the Jonathan Davis Wealth Management.
Good evening,
business.
Roberto.
Welcome back. Long time no see.
It's been a long time.
We're constantly exchanging messages on Twitter, but welcome back, Jonathan. Ian Welland is from the Watford and West Herts Chamber of Commerce, making his first appearance on the panel. Welcome to the programme.
Good evening to you.
And Jonathan Voles is a chartered accountant. His firm is based in Cranfield in Bedfordshire. And you brought me describe what this is. This is a cuddly toy.
It's just a little present for you, Rob.
Thank you very much. I can't really accept these presents, but just describe what it is. It's like a little fish.
It's a little fish. It's a beanbag fish. It's 5 or 6 inches long, something like that.
It's like Nemo.
Well, sort of. Yeah, sort of.
And the point is, you throw this at people.
You throw this at people in the office, and they throw them back.
Really?
You have a bit of fun.
Can't I put some weight in here, some lead or something?
It defeats the objective, because then if it hits somebody, it hurts. You see, the whole idea is
the objective is to throw it at someone else you work with.
Yeah.
For a bit of fun, and they throw it back at you.
They throw it back, and we have fish wars. We have little fish fights in the middle.
So you know what's going to happen now? He's going to throw it at us.
I wouldn't do it to guests, obviously, because insurance doesn't allow that.
We're not guests. Oh, yes, we are.
Yeah, but tomorrow morning when I get in, I tell it something in the building after I make some adult changes.
You just need to make a little hatch in the window there, and you get the, throw it at the support team.
My guest tonight, Jonathan Davis, Ian Welland, and Jonathan Voss. You're going to like what's coming up.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is Roberto Perrone
On BBC Three Counties Radio.
Right, so we'll kick off with this one. When will rich people actually pay the tax they owe? The Formula One boss Bernie Ecclestone has avoided a potential £1.2 billion tax bill as a result of a secret deal with Her Majesty's Revenue and Custom. The deal involved a payment of just £10 million, according to legal transcripts obtained by BBC Panorama. Now, Revenue and Custom spent 9 years investigating the Ecclestone family's tax affairs before offering to settle in return for the payment from the family trust in 2008. It was featured on the documentary film last night. I don't think anyone saw this film last night. Mm-hmm. What a great deal. So he would have paid £1.2 billion in tax. They paid just £10 million in tax in a secret deal with the taxman. Now, secret deals with Her Majesty's Revenue and Custom. How do you explain that to working class people, Jonathan?
Well, the answer is it wasn't his tax bill. It was a trust based in Liechtenstein that officially and legally he didn't actually have very much to do with. It was in his ex-wife's name.
It was in Slavica's name, and he paid, I think he's paid £1 million a week.
Something like that.
Because I think he can just about squeeze by on £1 million a week.
That'd be tough, but
from your ex-wife.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all gone through. It's just very, very clever, highbrow accounting.
Yeah, it is. Tax is really complicated when you're dealing with those sort of numbers, those sort of things. The fact that the taxman spent 9 years working it out and only ended up with 10 million quid gives you an idea of how complicated it is. And it's a little bit disingenuous in some ways because the money wasn't actually paid to Bernie. It was paid to a trust that he doesn't own, he doesn't control, even though perhaps the money is paid out where he wants it to be paid. Allegedly, I have to say, very hurriedly, in case anybody is listening.
How can a nurse working at the Luton Hospital, for example, get her salary paid to Liechtenstein through a trust and be paid that way, and then do a deal with Her Majesty's Revenue and Custom? Because I'd love to do a deal like this.
I'm sure there are nurses who get paid through trusts. I don't know of any myself. But it's something. One of the things to think about if someone's going to do really sophisticated tax planning, that probably costs hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds to implement, in the hope that it's going to save lots of money, but not necessarily in the certainty. In this particular case, I think there was a court case that finally decided that bits of it were the trust's money rather than Bernie's personal money. And of course, if the decision had gone the other way, he'd have paid shed loads of tax.
Roberto, I'm a wealth manager. I'm all for saving tax. It's part of what I do. The thing is, though, there's a constant brouhaha about Should the rich be taxed? Is it right that the 50% tax came down to 45%? And where should higher rate tax start? And national insurance? It's all nonsense, because the rich are not taxed. The very wealthy, earning £500,000 a year, £1 million a year, they're taxed. But the rich are not taxed, and the rich have never been taxed in British history.
Well, the government this morning just said it's clamping down on people who evade tax. Are they clamping down on the wrong people? I mean, I haven't got a problem with people who are very wealthy, who are rich, make money, but how do you justify secret deals with the taxman? I mean, people who are driving a bus all day, for example, or people who work in a nursing home, why can't they do a tax deal with Her Majesty's Revenue and Custom?
Because the system is set for you and me to pay taxes and the super rich to get away with it. It always has been.
Will that ever change?
When the people realise what's going on and they vote for the right people to make the changes, but that's probably not going to happen in your and my lifetime.
Well, I don't think that's quite right. I think the issue's bigger than that. If you were to take the example of some of the things that happened, way back in the day, in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, where you had the rock stars all emigrating to Australia and Switzerland, so they didn't pay tax in the UK. The rich people will always be able to pay for fantastic schemes and fantastic advice that means that they pay less tax.
I haven't got a problem with that.
But I think it's the richest 7 people in the UK pay something like 10% of all the income tax
But they
in
can
the
afford it.
UK.
I haven't got a problem with people who make money trying to reduce their tax liability. My problem with this is this secret deal with the revenue. I mean, Ian, why can't we just, at the end of the year, do your tax return and say, look at your pay slips, I don't want to pay that, I'll give you this.
Well, I think the key issue last night for me was the fact that it's a secret deal. I think there needs to be a bit more transparency. One of the throwaway comments that I read was that Mr. Eccleston allegedly pays something like £50 million of tax each year or something. Is that justifying his position on a secret deal, I ask myself. I'm no accountant. I pay people to work out my figures for the Chamber of Commerce. But the point is that I think what we're looking at is two things here. We're looking at a moral issue with regard to the payment of tax. There's no doubt about that. And I think you're both right on that one. But I think we are looking about a legislative problem here as well, because we've been screaming out in this country for a tax reform for some time now. Now, we played with it. The government has played with it. Various governments have played with it. What we're dealing with here is an inherent problem on a tax system. And the everyday man in the street that the four of us are have got a problem with it one way or another. Now, as I say, from a moral point of view, Mr. Eccleston allegedly is saying I'm paid £50 million of tax. Is that his, ace card, if you like, to the public as a large, saying, I do pay my taxes here. What's the problem?
We'll move on, but just to recap, Mr. Eccleston, the Chief Executive of Formula One, is currently on trial in Germany facing corruption charges, where it is alleged he was behind a £26 million bribe paid to a bank official.
There you go, see.
Let's move on. It's 12 and a half minutes past 6. I'm going to talk to my accountant. I need to do a secret deal with Revenue and Customs. I'm sure.
I'll put you in touch with... Oh, sorry, lads.
There'll be no... Can that be done? I once heard that if you go to the tax, give them some chocolate digestives, that makes it illegal. Is that...
No, it's moved on to hobnobs now.
Is it hobnobs?
Yeah, definitely.
Apparently, there's a whole biscuit culture. Depending on the kind of biscuits you give them, you get a better... Is it a hobnob then?
Yeah. They've got very sophisticated now with their biscuits.
You do have to be careful. They'll accuse you of bribing them if you use the wrong ones.
Right.
Can you not just say, because normally my problem's all been Jaffa cake, that's where I've gone wrong. Can you not say, if they come round to see you, the VAT man, and just say, look, do you want a cup of tea? Yeah. Oh, by the way, here's a chocolate hobnob. Is that the way it works?
If only it was.
You'll soon know, because the chocolate will be smeared on the actual form itself, so you'll know who you're dealing with, won't you?
That's right.
I wonder how many of these Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs guys got free tickets to Silverstone in the last couple of years.
Allegedly.
That's just a question.
I'm sure we'll find out. There's a future panorama programme there to be had. Ian is new to the panel tonight from the Watford and West Herts Chamber of Commerce. Just before we take some drivers, the Chamber of Commerce, what is it you do?
Well, it's interesting. We represent businesses. We've got about 450 businesses in Watford and West Hants. There's other chambers, of course, across Hertfordshire as well. There's a Hertfordshire County Chamber. Welling and Hatfield have got a chamber. St Albans got a chamber. Rickmansworth got a chamber. We allow our business, or create the environments for our business to business, member-to-member offers. We do networking events. We do business support. So we put businesses, members and non-members in touch with agencies and service providers for business support. We run a whole series of services, including export documentation for businesses who are doing overseas trading, of course. And we put on expos and conferences as well. We've got an expo coming up on the 13th of June, Friday the 13th of June, in Watford Town Centre. It's called Going for Growth. We've held it for the last 2 years. Very, very successful. And we also provide up-to-date information for businesses from a policy point of view, from a strategic planning point of view, and also for generally running their business.
I've always liked that Going for Growth conference.
Yeah.
The guy who hosts it, the presenter, he's very good looking. A very talented man.
Is he coming back this year? I hope he will come for a speaker, being a lunchtime speaker.
I'm sure I will again. My third appearance.
Hobnobs, is it? No, I can't remember.
Jaffa cakes every time.
I told you earlier.
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Delays at Watton-on-Stonewell Ware Road. The A602 remains closed after a collision. It's closed between the roundabout at the A119 and the exit for Ware Road near to Heath Mount School. Other routes, the M25, it's very busy clockwise, still queuing approaching junction 25 for Enfield, Chessington, the A10. Once you get past there, it's fine. A1M slow going from Welling at 6 up towards Nebworth and Stevenage. Heavy from the M25 up the M1, queuing towards Hemel, and then just slow all the way up to Luton at junction 10. And if you're heading off towards the airport, do leave a bit of extra time. They're doing some road works on the slip road there on the spur up towards the Kidneywood roundabout. So that's solid at the moment, heading off the M1 at junction 10, and you're queuing all the way back up Airport Way as well towards Luton Airport. Now on the trains, East Midland services disrupted tonight because of a signalling fault at Kettering, so that's causing delays and and cancellations as well between St Pancras, Sheffield, Nottingham and Corby. In London Midland have disruption between Bedford and Bletchley because of a broken down train. And more BBC Three Counties Radio.
The next travel bulletin is in 15 minutes.
BBC Three Counties Radio. Nick Coffer on BBC Three Counties Radio.
How about a bit of murder and death, particularly local murder and death from the 19th century?
I mean, one of the crimes in the book, I think there's a potential there for miscarriage of justice.
Here until 3 o'clock this afternoon. More great music to come in the next 2.5 hours. Every once in a while, I like a little bit of epic on this programme.
Nick Coffer.
Today I'm just outside of Aylesbury at Stoke Mandeville. I'm at Hula, which is an animal rescue centre in the paediatrics ward of the L&D Hospital. I'm in St Albans.
Nick Coffer, weekdays from 12 on BBC Three Counties Radio. The Business and Finance Hour with Roberto Perrone.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
My guests tonight, Jonathan Davis, Ian Welland and Jonathan Voles. Gentlemen, should you be prescribed personal finance advice by your GP? Duncan Selby, the head of Public Health England, says stress-related money worries are getting in the way of our good health. He thinks GPs should be able to send people to a financial advisor if they think it will help. Now, there's already a scheme running in Derbyshire where Citizens Advice have set up clinics in almost 100 GP surgeries. It's hoped the idea could save money by avoiding more expensive treatments later on. Now, if you can't handle money, is that a medical problem? Jonathan Davis, if a GP in your part of Hertfordshire read a prescription for a patient, go and see Jonathan Davis, and they came to you for some treatment, what would you prescribe them? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, if they came and see me, they'd probably be more depressed afterwards. But I used to be actually deputy chairman of my local CAB. And they do a phenomenal job, there's no question about that. And I think it's a brilliant idea of putting CAB, Citizen Advice Bureau advisors, within surgeries where people are ill because of their money worries. I think it's a great idea, and I would love to see this go national. There's no doubt if you're stressed and you're depressed, then that will have a major effect on your life, on your health, on your ability to just go about your daily life, and any help that people can have, perhaps with, I don't know, the local council, claiming benefits, etc. If you don't think of going to the CAB, but it's there, quote, on your doorstep, unquote, because you're there anyway, then great, go and use it.
Jonathan, does this problem need to be treated or solved or dealt with at an earlier stage when you go back to school and teaching children about how money, how finance works?
I personally don't think it's an education issue, as in structured education. I think it's a politician's thing. I think it's a media thing. I think, for example, as everybody knows, for the last 15 years, everyone's been told, go out and borrow whatever you want and you'll be all right. Well, you know, in the short term you are, but why do you think stress levels are so high? We have record levels of debt.
Ian Welland.
I think the GP, you've got to ask yourself, is the GP going to make referrals to one person, or is he going to make it several? Being the independent voice of business, Chambers of Commerce try and spread the business around, let's be honest about it. So you've got to ask yourself as a GP, if you're going to send somebody to take to get some financial advice, are you going to refer it to one particular financial advisor, or are you going to look at the whole list of them? And is that GP going to receive a referral percentage back? I mean, sorry to see it in everyday language, but that's the way I would look at it. As far as sort of stress, I think money worries can be quite stressful for a lot of people.
Very
I'm
stressful.
sure they are, and particularly during the recession. I mean, we all saw it. I mean, we know, sadly, bankruptcies were up, IVAs were increasing. We all know about those things. So they do have a massive impact to lifestyle. So I think, two things there. One, is a GP going to be transparent in who he's going to send off, and two, is it going to bring a lifestyle change to that person? That's what
But obviously, I'm also, I think if you've got a debt, you've got to pay it. I remember a case just before Christmas where I was in a big supermarket, in one of their phone sections, and I was trying to get a phone for my son. There's one in front of me in the queue, and because she was talking very loud, you could overhear the whole conversation, and she wanted to buy 2 iPhones on contract, and find the 2 iPhones, the presents for the kids, and she was going through she's talking very loud, so you could all, and the guy was explaining going through her credit history. She was living in rented accommodation.
Yeah.
She had county court judgments against her. She had no money, but she wanted 2 iPhones at £45 each. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, love. Do you not understand how this works? I mean, just not with it. And when she couldn't get the phone, she was getting really irate.
Yeah. We live in culture where people want as opposed to being able to afford. I can remember there was a saying when I was a kid about the never never. You either had something or the never never. These days, whether it's children or even adults, these things, they say, right, I want the latest Apple thing. I want this. I want that. I'm sorry for the advertising.
People expect it.
Yeah. So they go off and they get the bill on credit. We've all seen those payday loan adverts as well. Thousands of percentage of interest. I mean,
do you know what?
What sort of world are we living in?
People don't look at. Most people don't. I look at the small.
Yeah. I saw one the other day.
Most people don't look at that and think, oh, I can get some easy cash. Let's get the money in.
Yeah.
I need to go shopping.
Yeah, I don't understand it, but I think there's 2 things. It is about stress and money worries, and yes, we're coming out of recession. Yes, the recovery's underway, but there's still some worries there.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
But then it's a lifestyle thing.
Jonathan Voles.
Really? Well, I think there's genuine issues. Stress is a genuine health issue. And therefore, well, why not get the GPs involved? People who are in a stressful situation need all the help they can get. And if the GP's the place that starts it, fantastic. Interesting to note in this particular report, the scheme's run by the Citizens Advice Bureau, with that fine body of men, as the other Jonathan said. So you've got the NHS outsourcing stuff to a charity. I'm not so sure that that's pretty good. Perhaps the NHS should put some cash in as well. But like all counselling of any sort, what it actually depends on is how good is it? I'm sure loads of us know people who've been through counselling, and there's counselling and then there's counselling. And I think, it depends on the quality of what's there. And for people who are in a situation, whether it's money worries or lifestyle worries or debt worries or losing weight or smoking, whatever it happens to be, whatever is causing you stress, you need to resolve, because it will result in other issues. And I think this is symptomatic, though. There are lots of areas in which you can do this.
There's a lot to get through tonight. Thank you for all the texts. A lot of people are commenting on the Bernie Ecclestone story. Of course, I can't broadcast any of those comments. Suffice to say.
Why did Bernie text in?
Suffice to say, people are very unhappy.
See you in court, yeah.
I was already in court. He'd been dealt with there in Germany. Now, the British economy grew by 0.8% in the first 3 months of the year, meaning the output is almost back to the peak it reached before the recession in 2008. It's the fifth consecutive quarter that the economy has grown. The Chancellor, George Osborne, said the figures show Britain was coming back. But on the other side of the floor of the House, of course, the Shadow Chancellor, Ed Ball, said the recovery was not being felt by ordinary people.
Most people aren't seeing any recovery at all. Their living standards are still falling. And the question is, how do we make sure that we have growth which is built to last, but also which means that people in our country see their living standards rise, not just people on the highest incomes, but everybody else. And I think there, David Cameron and George Osborne continue to have no answers.
Is he right? I mean, the British economy grew by 0.8%, a fifth consecutive quarter, which is obviously very nice, heading in the right direction. But is it Ball's right? Ordinary people aren't feeling the benefit, Jonathan Davis.
The cost of living is much higher than I think people generally understand. For the last 5 years, aggregate incomes have been either flat or falling, whilst of course the cost of living has continued rising. And there's a quite depressing chart from the Office of National Statistics for the last 50 years, which shows for the 45 years until, 2008-9, practically every year incomes rose ahead of the cost of living. For the last 5 years, the cost of living has risen above earnings. There is no doubt that last year we saw pretty good economic growth. There is no doubt that this year we'll see pretty good economic growth. Bearing in mind that in 2010, 11 and 12, there was no growth, and yet we had the lowest borrowing rates in history. So what was the change? The change was one thing, 3 letters, HTB, Help to Buy. It got construction going, it got the housing market going, and the associated manufacturing and services. But, you know, in the recent budget, George Osborne forecasted growth effectively ad infinitum. And the media again went with this and said, that's great, we're going to grow for the next X years. Well, you know, there's one thing that you guys didn't look at. You didn't look at the rest of the world. And global growth is at best fragile. And I happen to believe in the next 2 or 3 years it's going to fall off a cliff for lots of reasons. Obviously, we don't have the time to discuss it. But if that happens...
We have got the time. We'll come back to...
Well, okay, there's an example.
But why do you think it will collapse?
Well, there's lots of reasons, but I'll give you one. China. The second biggest economy on the planet, and it's actually slowing down. And this is having a huge effect on America, on Europe, on Australia. And if they continue, as they have done for several months, if they continue to devalue their currency, then what that will mean is export prices to the West will fall. It will unleash deflation into the West, and I can tell you that will not be good for the Western economy, and be under no illusion the UK will not be a sea of tranquility if that's happening globally.
Because we obviously when China came out of communism and then developed into absorbing what the West was able to sell and buy from, of course, but the huge growth in China over the last 5-10 years perhaps was backed by the Chinese government giving people huge loans, incentives to start trading.
You know, it's a fascinating thing. China, although it's the second largest economy on the planet, it actually only makes up about 6% of the global economy, and yet in the last 5 years, half of all increase in global debt has been in China. So it is an economy totally based on hot air. No doubt it has fantastic 21st century cities. Anyone can Google them. They'll see cities for millions of folk. No one's living there. They've been building and building and building, but it's what we call malinvestment because it's not creating a penny in rent.
We'll come back with Jonathan Davis, Ian Welland and Jonathan Vols will come back to this story about the growth of the British economy grew by 0.8%. Can you feel the benefits?
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Tell you about the trains first of all. Lots of disruption to East Midlands services tonight because of a signalling fault at Kettering. So that's causing problems on the line between Wellingborough and Market Harbour, also on services through Bedford. That's East Midlands trains, delays and cancellations. London Midland disrupted between Bedford and Bletchley because of a broken down train. And on the roads at Watton-on-Stone, Ware Road, the A602 remains shut both directions. A collision closing the road between the roundabout at the A119 and Ware Road near to Heath Mount School. Adam Moore, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Adam, thank you. More from Adam in the next 15 minutes.
Across beds, cards and bugs.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
6:30 with the latest news headlines. Here's Richard Williams.
A Luton man who stabbed his neighbour to death was known to police and had been referred to the crisis mental health team. But a judge at Luton Crown Court said there was no warning that 35-year-old Samir Barber would be violent. Barber has admitted killing 67-year-old Leonard Flower on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Barnfield Federation is recruiting new governors. Reports earlier this year said the governance of the Bedfordshire organisation was lacking and blamed poor leadership. And Vauxhall has unveiled the new Luton-built Vivaro van at the Commercial Vehicle Show in Birmingham. The production of the new model in Bedfordshire scored 1,200 jobs in the Luton area. And two of Milton Keynes' famous concrete cows have been dug up today. The pair, who normally live in Bancroft, are being loaned to Venice for the 14th International Architecture Exhibition. Your weather, cloudy spells with light winds tonight, with some mist by morning, and there'll be a low of 8 degrees Celsius. And don't forget, you can get all your latest news and sport online at bbc.co.uk/Three Counties.
On FM, AM, online and digital radio.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
The panel tonight, Jonathan Davis, Ian Welland and Jonathan Vols. We have been talking about the growth where the British economy grew by 0.8% in the first 3 months of the year, meaning it's almost back to the peak it was before the recession in 2008. The shadow chance at balls and the recovery was not being felt by ordinary people. This is what some folk have been telling us.
Rate of increase of bills has slowed down. Not checking the bank account quite as often as I was doing 6 months ago, yeah.
Price of everything and the amount of money I'm getting paid, it's not weighing up very well at the minute. So not got a lot of spare money at all.
For the last 6 months to a year, you just feel like you've got a lot more job security.
Can pay rent, can pay the bills, but then it's having a social life on top of that because everything else is costing so much. No shoes or clothes. That's a big sacrifice.
Jonathan Vols.
Well, complete mixture of things there. Some people saying, they're feeling the love from the job security point of view. Others saying can pay the bills, can't go out at the weekend and stuff like that. And I think what we're seeing is we've had a recession and some people have come out of it and some aren't. And I think, well, that's not news. That's a non-story because that's where we've been for a few years and we're possibly going to be there a bit longer. I think the good news is whatever the statistics say in terms of is it 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 or whatever, that we have growth. And that's the key, because if the businesses aren't growing, then what's going to be the outcome for jobs, for families, for businesses? So we need to have business growth.
But are we out of the woods? I mean, I know Jonathan is quite pessimistic, but he has been quite accurate over the last couple of years, of course. But will it carry on growing? Will we still fall into this trouble? Think, do you know what? We're out of the woods. It's all plain sailing.
As far as business is concerned, it's never plain sailing. You're only as good as tomorrow or the day after, and therefore you have to keep on working hard and striving to make it a success. In terms of the economy, well, talking about the economy is a falsehood, because actually what you should be talking about is the corner shop, the plumber, the businessman near you, because the economy is made up of all those little businesses. And therefore, if you want the economy to work, spend money locally.
I think that's a very good point, because in fact the CBI made the point today on this story that the service sector and industry generally is driving this recovery at the moment, and the first quarter figures, they're not big surprises here, are they? I mean, the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee adjusted their recovery growth forecast only last Thursday. So this is not a new story as such. I think what we have to look at is the effect on businesses generally. We're finding as a Chamber of Commerce that businesses are telling us that they're now in a position to plan 3 to 5 years ahead because the recovery has given them the indications to do that.
It's given them confidence to actually
confidence, absolutely confidence. But what we are finding is there's still this problem of prices versus salaries. Mm-hmm. And public sector, for instance, have given themselves a pay rise, I think, generally 1% across the board this year. That's put pressure on the private sector, in point of fact. So there is still an issue there. But this is not new news. And indeed, the British Chamber survey only recently proved the same thing, that, this is not new news. We've been expecting this uplift. And it is a slight uplift, let's be honest about it.
Ian, can I ask you, Watford and West Hertfordshire Chamber of Commerce, why is business so successful in that part of Hertfordshire?
It's successful for two reasons. One, you have to look at its geographic location as well. We're right on the doorstep of London, but we're also we're well bedded in the home counties. That's the first thing. Now, Hertfordshire is a great place to do business, but business doesn't do what local authorities do. They're not confined by the boundaries, so they go outside of those boundaries. We encourage that, of course, and we encourage working with our fellow chambers as well. Businesses generally in this area are well placed. The sectors are well placed. They're established. We've got great sectors, in science and in industry, service, rail links are good, air links, everything we've got there, road, rail, air, everything's right. The combinations are right. So it suits business. So that's why business is successful. The other thing is that we're very good at talking it up as well. And we do have both, commuting into the capital, but we have a lot of people that come to our towns and cities within Hertfordshire and Buckinghamshire and Bedfordshire to work as well. So we've got the expertise there, we've got the skills. What we must be focusing on, and I have to be honest with you about this, is the next generation workforce. We have to start looking at that more critically, I think, and things like apprenticeships and work placements and things like that. We need to be a little bit more switched on for that.
Hotels and coffee, is there any other business as good as this? I mean, Whitbread, the owner of Costa Coffee, locally based in Luton, of course, has reported a 30% rise in full-year revenues to £2.3 billion, and a big rise at Costa Coffee, rising 21.9%. Andy Harrison, the chief executive, has declared a strong set of results and has hiked the dividend up from by 19.9%. Very good if you're a shareholder, of course. We seem to celebrate how well we spend money, and when it comes to leisure industry, hotels and coffees, we are really good at drinking coffee and spending money. But shouldn't we be more concerned about manufacturing, Jonathan Davies? Well, congratulations to Whitbread. I mean, Costa coffee shops everywhere, hotels everywhere, brilliant. But what about the engineering skills?
I'm the first to celebrate and congratulate success, but ultimately, and people like me have been saying this for the past 10 or 15 years, if you develop an economy based on buying and selling houses or buying and selling coffee, as it were, well, that's not long-term sustainable generationally. Look at Germany, arguably the most successful economy on the planet, and it makes things high quality manufactured goods which it exports around the world, and look how successful and look how prosperous Germans are.
I mean, our car industry is very good. I mean, Jaguar, Land Rover, and those iconic brands, those luxury goods, doing very well around the world. I'm just wondering whether the sort of the more run-of-the-mill, without being rude, businesses should be concentrating on real skills, real engineering.
These businesses and services will continue to do well while we have a debt-fueled society. At some point, I'm afraid to say, it's going to come to a sharp halt, and that's when a debt-fueled society, a debt-fueled economy, is really going to feel painful.
Jonathan Voles.
Well, I think you're right in one sense, in that if you've got too much debt and things come to a halt, it's problematical. But also, I have to say, there are all sorts of really nice signs out there. I've got clients in the three counties who are into manufacturing, light engineering, who are doing really very well. And one of the keys is finding out a way to compete with low-cost imports from China and Eastern Europe and places like that. And actually, that comes down to good management, innovative ideas, actually all those things that make you a good business, rather than somebody who looks back to what it was like 20 years ago and says, well, that's how I did it then, so I'll do it the same now. You have to grow, develop, move on, and that holds true in any business, absolutely any business. You have to evolve and grow and become better than the rest. The difference is, 20 years ago, we were saying we're better than the French. Now we have to say...
We're always better than French.
Well, absolutely. But now we have to work and compete on a world stage. So you could have somebody making widgets in Bedford whose principal competitor is in the Hainan province of China. You don't know. That's what the world economy means. You've got to be better than everybody.
The original question, Ian, was about the Whitbread doing very, very well.
The coffee, yes. Yeah, I'm a bit of a coffee snob myself, and I must admit that some of my money's gone into these profits, I think. But I think we've become a nation of coffee drinkers. We've got coffee houses on the high street are a feature everywhere, aren't they? So it's not surprising that there are these figures.
Do you think people are aware of what they're spending? I mean, the other Saturday I was in my little 12-year-old boy. I was taking. We wanted a day out in London. He wanted go into one of these shops for a coffee. Okay, and I'm just looking around the people. You just observe the people around you on a Saturday afternoon, and you're thinking, and you're watching their spend. Yeah, if there's two or three of them on a fancy coffee with some extra creamy stuff on top, and they're buying a cake and they're buying this. I mean, I don't know if they even look at the bill. They just put the card in, depress it. It's like 30 quid they're spending for a couple of coffees.
For me, being a coffee snob, as we say, I have to say that I don't actually rate this particular brand of coffee. It's there on the high street, so I take it. Yeah, we have it. We all have the cappuccinos and everything else.
400 million people have bought coffee from us.
Yeah, but I have to say, we've got a business in Watford. I won't mention their names, but we've got a business in Watford, an independent coffee tea house cafe in the lower high street, and it's absolutely superb. They do the best coffee in Hertfordshire, people. I'm not going to say who they are, but they're not this company. They're not Costas, they're not Coffee Nero's. They're called Ocean Bell.
Well, listen, can these small independents survive?
Yes.
Because, you look, and it's become such a corporate world. I mean, traditionally you would be able to open a coffee shop and make a living at it as a family unit. Can that still carry on?
Yes, it can, and I think it goes back to Jonathan's point and your point as well. If it's managed correctly, if it's what the customer wants, it's good quality at the right price. It's the old economics, isn't it? It's the old economics book. If it works in those ways, it will survive.
Absolutely. And there are some really great family-owned businesses out there. And, if you look at the Tesco's and the Sainsbury's of modern day, they started somewhere. They started as a mum and pop store.
Yeah, but what are the chances of somebody starting a business today, a retail business today, and becoming the next Tesco, do you think?
Pretty good.
It's possible.
Really? Jonathan Davis, do you think it's possible?
In that particular sector of the economy, I'm not as positive on that as you. I certainly believe that there is now increasing competition in the grocery sector. I think I've said to you in the past, actually, Roberto, I love Aldi. I love it. It sells what I call Tesco premium quality for Tesco value prices. So the bulk of our weekly shop is an Aldi. Whether or not we could get another Aldi to come in, I've no idea. Certainly I'm all for small businesses, SMEs. That's the future of our economy. Unfortunately, the politicians are always with the big companies.
Philip Green is suggesting that perhaps he wants to venture into the grocery and the retail industry and offer low cost
Great.
groceries.
I'd love it. More competition. That's capitalism. Capitalism helps the people to the detriment of the big corporate.
Okay. We've just been discussing how the economy is on the rise. It's consecutive growth, which is very nice. Is it time to start asking for a pay rise, perhaps? The wage analyst expert HR say fewer than 1 in 10 deals in the quarter to March involved a pay freeze, while increases in private firms were worth 2.5%. Many people have taken pay cuts for the last few years, or no pay rises, which is the same thing, of course. Is it time to go knocking on the door saying, do you know what? Thanks for the throwing fish you gave.
Oh, here it comes. Watch out.
The throwable fish, Jonathan.
Where's the webcam?
Can I just have a pay rise instead? Well, the fish is great. Can I just have a little pay rise instead?
Well, the fish cost me about £3. So, you know...
Did you catch her, actually?
Three quid spread across the... Here you go, I'll throw it to Jello, Jonathan. £3 spread across the year doesn't give you much for a pay rise. And I think the thing with pay rises is sometimes people expect them. They're mine. I'm due them because I'm an employee. No. If the business is making a profit and can afford to pay a pay rise, then it can give you one. And I think there's a big disconnect there between people saying it's I'm due one, I'm owed one, it's mine, I need it. Well, yeah, you might need it, and you may have been, you know, a loyal worker for a firm, but how much can that firm afford to pay? That's the key, I believe.
The other Jonathan.
I like the other Jonathan. I'm an employer, and I'm as open with our finances with all my colleagues as I believe I can be. So all my colleagues know ultimately what's going on in the firm and our growths and our opportunities and our where we're making our profits, and they know what's achievable. And we have a particularly progressive incomes policy in that everyone gets a very good salary first of all, and on top of that they can earn up to 30% more if A, they do really well, and B, the firm does really well. And that seems to be something that works for everyone.
Ian, well, and give me some respect. Should we start asking for pay rises?
No, I don't think we should go down that road. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Roberto. I have to agree with the two Jonathans, really. If a business is fit for purpose, it's doing well, it's above the line, then consideration for pay rises is all well and good. I think we're coming out of the years of recession. We've heard about some pay rises, particularly in the public sector. I mentioned it earlier. It was 1% across the board. That's put pressure on private sector to award pay rises. I'm sorry, but if the companies are not in that position to do so, it'll be a very dangerous place to do.
Well, also there's a CBI survey, and the CBI survey said that if you look at CPI, consumer price inflation, rather than retail price inflation, that's about 1.6% to the year to March, but wage inflation is about 1.7% to the year to March. So actually, you got two different surveys saying completely different things. Lies, damn lies, and then statistics.
Let's take some latest travel news.
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Still lots of delays around Watton-on-Stone tonight because of the closure of Ware Road, the A602. It's shut both ways after an accident, happened around 5 o'clock this evening. So Ware Road is shut between the A119 roundabout and Watton-on-Stone and the exit for Ware Road near Sackham Road. Now, because of that, you're all being pushed down the A119 North Road towards Hertford. That's absolutely solid at the moment, all the way from Stapleford down to the centre of Hertford. The A414 as well, Hertford Road, really slow this evening. Eastbound queuing all the way back towards the A1M, and westbound you're also very slow from the A10. Delays there of around half an hour to get through the queues. Adam Moore, BBC Three Counties Radio.
The next travel bulletin is in 15 minutes.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
BBC Local Apprentice Scheme.
Hiya, it's Kelly Betts from Ian Lee's show. I'm a broadcast assistant.
Now, if you've ever wanted to work for the BBC, this could be your chance.
Radio is the only thing that I've ever really wanted to do.
We're holding two information events. The first on Saturday the 3rd of May at 12:30 here at the BBC studios in Luton, and the second on Monday the 5th of May at 12:30 at the BBC bus, which will be parked in the car park at Stadium MK.
I pestered for 1 week's work experience.
You'll be able to find out more about the scheme and how to apply. No need to book, just turn up on either day.
By the end of the week, I just never left, and I'm still here. I don't think I'm ever going to leave.
For full details on how you can apply, go to bbc.co.uk/LAS.
The Business and Finance Hour with Roberto Perrone.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Ian Wellenders from the Watford and West Hertfordshire Chamber of Commerce. Should be very easy to find on a Google search, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's actually watfordchamber.co.uk.
Jonathan Viles is a chartered accountant. Your firm is based in Cranfield in Bedfordshire. You're a nice employer.
Oh, I'm a lovely employer. I think I'm fantastic, then I would, wouldn't I? But no,
I love when you say that, because normally when somebody says that, their employers normally texting saying, Rob, it's not really.
well, all of my staff are volunteers. You know, they can go and get another job with another firm of accountants and probably get very similar basic terms and conditions. The difference is they don't get to throw fish at other places. They do at ours.
Okay. And Jonathan Davis is from Hertfordshire. Jonathan's the man behind Jonathan Davis Wealth Management. Do you have some very wealthy clients? Because I know that where you're based in sort of Hoddesdon and Broxbourne, you can't move for Ferraris and Aston Martins and Lamborghinis. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, people are very unhappy around there. No, our clients are in fact national and indeed on 2 other continents. So I'm all over the show, as it were.
Very nice. Gentlemen, should the Mayor of London make sure tube strikes never ever take place again? A 2-day strike for London Underground workers started at 9 o'clock last night. Talks between the London authorities and the R&T union ended without agreement. Yesterday there have been considerable disruption to the capital's commuters throughout the day. If you can put the disruption to travellers to one side, it's the cost to business when literally the capital comes to a grinding halt. Ian, I mean, should they put measures in place that they can't take strike action? They can't bring the capital to a standstill.
No, I don't think that can happen. It's interesting with this, isn't it? Because the talks have been going on for some considerable time. It's just made the top story today because of the capital. The world seems to evolve around what London does. We're in Hertfordshire. It's a busy place. It's a business place. There are ways of getting in and out of London.
Well, hang on. How many meetings have been cancelled today because it's due to be held in London? Or how many people living in the 3 counties have had to take a day's holiday or make other arrangements because they can get a train into Euston or King's Cross and then they're literally just stranded?
But aren't we in danger of just looking at the personal inconvenience as compared to the right to strike? Now, I'm not a socialist, I'm a capitalist, but I don't think that you can take away people's right to strike and right to disagree with things.
You asked me about the disruption to business. And let's be honest, we can all work from home these days, or the majority of people can work at least 1 day or 2 days at home because of things being in the cloud, and you can get onto. We were talking about it before we come on air.
I'm not an employer, but if I was employing you 3 guys, and you're obviously very well remunerated, right? But I'd want you in the office. I wouldn't want you working at home.
It's an opportunity, if you like, to just do something different on the day of the strike. You can work. If you can work from home, you're still working.
I'll tell you what's taken away the right to strike over the years. It's a thing called technology. And as technology has made working conditions or practices more streamlined, it has, of course, altered business dramatically. So that's why, in effect, you really only now have trades unions in the public sector. You practically don't have trade unions in the private sector. And basic economics, everyone probably understands what the word monopoly is. Monopoly is if you are, in effect, the largest, by far, supplier of a service. London Underground has a monopoly supply of labour. And that is why, for decades, the trades union has taken us all for an absolute ride. That's why the average earnings of a train driver in the Underground is 50, 60, 70,000 pounds a year, including benefits.
Well, that was down to the late Bob Crow, who worked so hard for getting the best deal. You've got to applaud him for that.
Hey, if I was a monopolist, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. So what the powers that be should be bringing in technology to take away that monopoly.
Hang on.
Which is
the argument here is about this unmanned stations, these ticketless machines.
Yeah.
I have to confess, personally, I like the idea of manned tube stations.
Okay. I like the idea of
then you pay for it.
Let's be honest.
But we do pay for it. Was it £8.50 for it?
You pay an awful lot of money for that extra service. Now, I'm telling you, there are lots of folk who A, don't want to pay it, and B, can hardly afford to pay it because they don't earn the vast salary that you do.
Jonathan Moss.
Well, the cost of commuting is huge, isn't it? I mean, there was a study that said you're going to pay, so many £1,000s a year, and over the cost of a working lifetime, a really huge amount if you added up over the years. So I think there's lots of little issues here that are conflicting. We've got a monopoly, as you said, not only because Transport for London is the only one that does it in terms of mass transport, but the union is the only one that supplies the labour, so they can argue for what are, in Johnson's view, and lots of others will, I'm sure, agree, really excessive salaries. And technology is one of the ways in which you can bring the cost down. Wouldn't it be nice that, rather than paying 30 quid for a day return into central London from our part of the world, that it was only 20 quid?
There is another option here, and if you go to, I went to Holland recently, and they didn't have manned stations. What they had was ticket booths and kiosks, and you could buy your tickets anywhere in tourist information areas and all sorts of places. You didn't necessarily need personnel on a desk at a railway station or a tram station or wherever it was. That, for me, is a good case study. Whether this strike is good or bad or needs to be sorted and Boris needs to do is neither here nor there. The effect on business is that business can react in other ways and deal with it. Okay. And it's a bit like the big freeze we had 2 years ago when some businesses allowed their staff to work from home. That's how we created the cloud and everything else so that people have flexibility in their working practice.
Let's try and squeeze two more stories in because the hour's up. We're going to be over very, very quickly. Will a new website turn around the fortunes of M&S? Marks and Spencer's will this week make a high-profile push for its relaunched website and delivery service to capitalise on what is a £150 million revamp. Now, the company hopes the drive will help lift muted clothing sales and capitalise on the growing trend for shopping online. Multi-channel director Laura Wade-Gerry is expected to launch the plan on Thursday, I think, as part of a media blitz to inform shoppers of the changes. Marks and Spencer's have had problems. The competition is fierce on the high street. They've lost out. Will a new website turn around the fortunes of this former giant, Jonathan Bowles?
Well, it can't hurt. But actually, I'm a little bit sceptical. I don't know about other people, but when I buy items of clothing, I need to try it on. I need to feel the cloth. I need to look at the colour. So I think, for me, online shopping only works where I've already done that because I've been into a store somewhere and I know what I'm looking at. What do other people think?
Ian Welland.
I think it would help. I agree with that. I don't think we are quite at the point where we look at something and buy it in terms of clothes, shoes, typical examples. Everything else we buy online, DVDs and CDs or whatever it is. But this, no. I think it will add to the offer and the value, and I think there'll be better deals to be had because I think prices will reflect that online versus the shop price. But that's my view.
I was simply going to say that the rate of growth in online shopping of all goods and indeed services is exponential, absolutely phenomenal. And I doubt very much that this would work for them over the next year or two. But yes, if they want to be around in 10 years' time, they absolutely have to be up there as good online as Amazon and Next.
Thank you for your message. Sue says, Rob, why can't your guest name that good coffee place when you're naming all those big companies? You did name it.
I did name it. It's called Ocean Bell, and it's in the High Street in Watford.
Maybe they can come in one night and sit on the panel and talk about how their business works.
They're very good.
Okay. Do you have, gentlemen, any used £50 notes under the mattress? I'm sure you have. The £50 note featuring the first governor of the Bank of England, Sir John Houblon, will be withdrawn tomorrow after 20 years in circulation. There were at one stage 53 million of them in circulation with a value of £2.65 billion. You can still trade them in and get the value back, of course. It doesn't go off, of course. £50. I love those £50 notes. Do you have any used £50 notes under your mattress, Jonathan Voss?
No, but I do have one in my wallet. I don't know if it's an old one or a new one, though, because it's been there for a while.
Let's have a look. Is it?
Yeah, well, sorry. It's in the car.
I'll give you a tenner for it. It's the big red one.
If mine was under the if mine was under the mattress, my Louise would have found it by now. So I'm sure there's nothing there.
You sure?
Absolutely.
Jonathan Davis, you must have a £50 note. You must have a whole stack of them somewhere.
I wouldn't be holding cash if that was my options. No, I'd be putting it into investments that are going to make me some money.
Really?
Good point.
Do we need a bigger denomination of note? I mean, the £50 is the biggest note. Do you need like a £500 note? Imagine having a waffle of those.
Well, the police wouldn't like you if you did that. Because apparently, because there's a €1,000 note, it's the prime item of currency for drug dealers and money launderers. So, personally,
I've never seen Is there such a thing as a €1,000 note?
Apparently so. Now, I haven't seen one myself, so I may well be blowing smoke out of my orifices, but I haven't.
If someone gives you a €1,000 note, you're going to think it's not real. It's so large.
And that's why it's so, as Jonathan says, that's why it's so excellent for money laundering and for drug dealing cross-border, because it's easy to transport. You can transport a lot of cash, a lot of money, very easily, as opposed to
having a suitcase.
What a way to end the business program.
Drugs
money
and money.
laundering. I couldn't have designed it better. Jonathan, where can people find out more about you, Jonathan Davis?
Or they could go to the website, which is jonathandaviswm.com. WM means wealth manager.
Ian Welland.
It's watfordchamber.co.uk, or you can give us a ring on 01923 442 442.
Jonathan Vols.
Well, as ever, the web's a good place to go. The website's www.vowels.co.uk, VOWLES, for those of you who can't spell. And
I can't help it. I'm a blooming foreigner. I can't do apologise. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you. You've been very entertaining.
Thank you.
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Some long delays at Watton-on-Stone, where Ware Road, the A602, still closed both ways after a collision. Happened around 5 o'clock this evening. So Ware Road is shut, but